Hello, everyone. Welcome to Class 3 of Intentional Change Theory, how to affect change at a personal and organizational level. And what we're going to talk about today is shared vision. So if you remember from looking at our model from Class 2, we basically have this model of change. How do you affect change, or how do you create change in organizations or groups? Starts off with the very first item, shared vision. And so this model, again, it comes from Richard Boyatzis and Ellen Van Oosteen, both professors at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. There, if you want to find out more about them, you can go to Case Western, or there's a link to our actual paper that's this is presented in at the bottom of this slide. So today, what I want to talk to you guys about is how do you create that shared vision. So there's three that I know of, three basic categories that creating a shared vision falls into. One is co-creation, or co-creating strategy or vision together. There's a top-down perspective and a complexity theory perspective. I'll touch on co-creation in just a second, but the top-down perspective is the typical, the burning platform, create a crises, or it's the, hey, you're going to do X, or you're going to do Y, or you're going to, you're going to change, and telling people they have to do something. A perfect example of this is an SAP rollout. If you're a large organization, SAP comes along, and then you're basically told that you have to change everything you do to accommodate SAP. That's a top-down driven initiative. Initiatives like that, or traditional change initiatives, usually are driven that way, and they're usually only about 30% effective. So usually only 30% of the change efforts will get the results that you want the first time around. So the odds usually aren't pretty good with that. Now, complexity theory, this is a little bit newer, and we're not going to go into it too much in detail. But basically, it's saying that you can create a vision, but the vision would manifest on its own just through conversations and being mindful of the present. And that sounds may sound a little funny to a lot of you guys, but let me see if I can explain a little better. The idea behind complexity theory is that if you don't set a specific directive, and you let people, the system in a room, have a conversation, things tend to bubble to the top, and those themes will be the group's way of aligning together or sharing a vision. There's a whole set of principles behind that, but like I said, we're not going to get into that too much. What I do want to talk about today is the co-creation. How do you co-create a shared vision so it energizes people versus demotivates people? And I've got down here two different techniques, Appreciative Inquiry and World Cafe, both very similar. I haven't used World Cafe quite as much, but I have used Appreciative Inquiry. So what I'm going to do is in this class, we're going to talk about how to create that shared vision using an Appreciative Inquiry methodology. So real quick, before we get into that, so let's talk about some of the advantages of co-creation and what it kind of looks like. The biggest thing that you get from it is an energized workforce, and you're building towards what people want to aspire to versus building towards something or changing because of someone's afraid of something. For instance, the burning platform change methodology. We're in a crisis, we got to change or else we die. Some of the things that are really unique with this is that it's built off of strengths. So we're going to take a strengths-based approach. So we're going to be asking what's going well and how can we build on it versus what's broke and how do we fix it. So a lot of times in change efforts, when we're having something that we want to change, we always go to what's broke and how do we fix it, and again try to scare people into or telling them all these things are wrong and sky is falling type mentality. When this approach says, don't forget about that, but let's focus on the strengths first and then take a look at what we need to fix. Some of the other characteristics too that I want to mention here that are important is you try to get as much of a representation of the whole system as possible, whether it's customers, employees, vendors, whomever you have, but as many stakeholders in that conversation, the better. So appreciative inquiry, the method that we're going to go over today, it's founded by David Cooperrider. He's a professor at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a methodology, it's a strengths-based methodology that looks at what's working well and how do we build on it. And it's interview-based, and we're going to talk about an example of how it's been used. And if you look at your notes on University of Reddit, under this class, there are some additional materials besides just these PowerPoint slides. So, one of the shift in paradigm appreciative inquiry takes is that typically when we look at organizations, we look at them as machines, as how can we pull on levers to fix them, or how can we pull on the change button, or how can we press the change button to make a certain part change. And it really changes the focus from being a machine to more of a thing, an organization a lot of practitioners will say it's a thing of wonder. So more of a curious about what are the relationships and how are they working together? How are what are the good things that have come from this organization? So you're looking at it from a different frame or reference. From a very high level perspective, AI is what I'll call for short at times, or appreciative inquiry, basically talks about first a high point story in someone's life. It's sort of like a warm-up question. Then we look at high point success stories related to chosen topics. So for instance, in the example I'll show you, we picked one topic and we asked some high point questions around that topic. And then at the very end, we asked people to envision the future. What do you want the future to be? So you're building off of your strengths into a new future. Now, a lot of times you'll ask questions about certain things, and when you ask them what they want the future to be like, they don't actually use the information that they thought of in the first questions you asked, and that's okay. And don't want to get too much into detail of it here, but just know that what you probably want to do here is you want to go online and go to the third class, download the Appreciative Inquiry Guide for Organization Change Alliance, or OCA, from Atlanta, Georgia. That'll give you an idea of the questions and how things are asked when you're doing an appreciative inquiry. Okay, and the process, once you take a look at that interview guide, the way that process works is we had a room of about 50 people or so, and what we said was, okay, you guys pair up with someone you've never met before, and you ask each other, you interview each other. And then what we do is we say, okay, after that's done, what you do is you come into groups of 7 or 8, usually anywhere from 6 to 8 is ideal. And then you share the story, but the idea is you share the story of the person that you interviewed. And so what happens is everyone goes around, shares a story, and then you have collect themes. What are some of the common themes from the stories? And what that lets you do is that lets you find what's called your positive core, basically what's working well right now. And at the end of the questionnaire, there's always something about the future. What do you want things to become? Well, that's when you go around and say, okay, what are the common themes around the future state? That's really where you start getting into your visioning piece, where we talk about a shared vision. That's the starting point in that small group of starting to form a shared vision. So this group of 8 is starting to form a shared vision of what the future should look like. And then what you do is you go around and the whole room actually starts sharing their vision of the future. And then what happens is themes start coming up, and then you have teams actually start to come up with, okay, now we have an idea of what we want to do in the future. How do we actually get it done? And again, you do that in the smaller groups. And at the very end of it all, you'll have for our example, when we did it with the Organization Change Alliance, we had about 4 groups, and each group had about a few ideas, and they would present on those ideas, and then everyone would vote with their feet. Similar to open space technology, basically all you say was, okay, who has energy around this topic or that topic or this topic? And then the topics that people had energy around, they would go towards, and that was what got bubbled up to the top. Yeah. And through this whole process, we used Appreciative Inquiry as a tool for deciding the strategy for this nonprofit organization, Organization Change Alliance. And just a quick background on that, Organization Change Alliance is actually a group of organizational development professionals. So it's a really neat set of folks that focus on change and change management. So when we did this, we used it to really generate key breakthrough objectives for the organization. And the themes that came to the top were really around inclusion and rebranding. And if you take a look at University of Reddit site, you will see that under Class 3, there's also an uploaded document of the steps that we followed to get this done, from the board level all the way down to the actual strategy. And then I think it's a 2-page document. The second page actually has a strategy itself. It's a little bit different of a format. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out and I can kind of explain it to you. But it gives you an idea of how you can use something like this shared vision to actually take it into action. And so we followed the very similar process to the one that I'm showing you guys, where we created a shared vision, and then we looked at a assessment of where we were. And then from there, we said, okay, what does a strategy plan look like, which is uploaded to the University of Reddit page. And then we have an action plan, which is not uploaded, but it's a very simple thing. What we do is we take the items that are outstanding for this particular year, and then we say, okay, what's the plan to actually execute to them? Excuse me. Long story short, what you get with doing something like this is that you get engagement, you get buy-in, and you get a vision that everyone can believe in and is committed to at some level. So for what I'd like for you guys to do is, again, go to the subreddit Positive Change for any kind of questions or conversations you might have, and share an example that you have on how you plan to create shared vision, or how you have created it before, maybe using something similar, or what has worked well for you. Maybe use something a little bit different that worked really well that we haven't talked about. Maybe you have a question about how do I create a shared vision in a small group or a larger group. We can talk through that as well. So please feel free to share your input there. And again, if you have any questions, please post them there as well. Okay. Well, that's the end of this one. If you have any other questions, again, go to the subreddit Positive Change, and look forward to talking to you guys and seeing you next class.